One piece of advice I've always had for CEOs is you've got to have ability to get outside the organization and look at it from outside.
We've spoken about the CEO as sort of a conductor, synthesizer, orchestrator, that they need to apply power effectively, and they've got to have a diary that's well managed.
It's your responsibility to look at the whole business, as its finance, its products, its operations, all of it, and integrate. You're like an orchestra conductor, getting the elements to come together and to serve a market and to serve the people in the organization.
I'm Adrian Saville. Welcome to our episode of Fate, Luck and Choice. Like us, love us, follow us, subscribe. And it's a pleasure to be with you again, Nick, talking about the role of the CEO, who's been listening to Fate, Luck and Choice. And what am I supposed to do with all of this?
Well, I'm not sure what you've got to do with all of this, but we're going to have a conversation about being a CEO.
Yeah. So, let's get this all the way, from concepts, ideas, arguments into what does it mean to be a CEO?
Right. Well, let me start by saying, if you've had those occasions in your career, or if it's something that you're really interested in playing, that apex leadership role, it is an extraordinary privileged role to play, because it's the space in which the final buck stops. And in a sense, if you're a good CEO, you're a steward of almost everything that happens. Doesn't mean you create everything that happens, doesn't mean you worry about everything that happens, if you can't do everything that happens. But there is a focal role in where all the good stuff and all the bad stuff comes in the ratio 2-to-1 in favor of the bad stuff. And it's a very privileged perspective.
You've got those ratios the wrong way around.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah?
It's more trouble than good news.
Okay.
And so it's a privileged cockpit in a way, a panorama, because it's your responsibility to look at the whole business, as its finance, its products, its operations, all of it, and integrate. You're like an orchestra conductor, getting the elements to come together and to serve a market and to serve the people in the organization. So it's a very privileged position. And I only, when I got into that kind of job, realized actually this is different. You have to worry about things that other people don't have to worry about. And so, that's why it's such an important role. I remember seeing research some years ago that 50% of the value of a Fortune 500 company depends on one person. Not just an entrepreneur, so we've seen many great entrepreneurs, but also corporate leaders.
So if the CEO is fundamental, instrumental in shaping, influencing the valuation of the firm, this then says the CEO gets paid a lot. That's one reason to aspire to be a CEO.
Sure.
If it's financial pursuit, that's
that's your goal.
the person who ends with the most wins. If that's aspirational, but
no, I think
that's not the calling.
No,
right?
it's much deeper than that, and it's a willingness. These are very stressful jobs.
Yeah.
In South Africa and elsewhere, the pressure to perform through the stock market, through the shareholders, through the senior employees, through the whole organization, or even your customers,
external stakeholders,
absolutely, is enormous. And normally, when we've talked about strategy, it's about next. So you have to think not about just what's going on today and how do we get in the room. You got to think about how we're going to get out of the room. And inevitably, that means bringing about an agenda of change, changing the organization, changing the products. And that's very, very pressured. So one of the key success factors for a CEO is the management of time. And in some of the jobs I did when I was in the apex role, I'd go home after a 70-hour week completely exhausted and realize I'd actually done bugger all. I'd done lots of work, but I hadn't actually made a difference. And the CEO's job is to fight for time, to have the time to think and experiment, cajole, communicate, decide. And you've got to have that free time.
So what does the CEO's diary look like then?
Well, John Cotter did a study of this and said the average meeting length is 7 minutes. The CEO will have 30 encounters a day, will definitely work 60, 70 hours a week. So it's a very highly pressured job where you've got to try and manage your diary effectively. These days, of course, we do it all digitally. One piece of advice I've always had for CEOs is you've got to have ability to get outside the organization and look at it from outside. You can't get so into the weeds that you lose perspective. You've got to take, as I used to say, take the octopus off your head and put it down and see with your own eyes what's going on. That's the thing a CEO has to do. And of course, it comes with a lot of power, because by definition, you are the person most responsible. And so you've got to manage your power very, very carefully. You can be a custodian of that power. You should seldom have to exercise your formal power. You should seldom have to give an instruction. South Africa, I think, has many managers, very few great corporate leaders. We've had many. We've built some extraordinary companies led by corporate leaders as opposed to founders. But it is a unique job. And I suppose part of my message and interest in this is the people who are in the team with the CEO. How should you support a CEO? How do you manage those relationships? Because a CEO often faces conflicts between different divisions or different functions in the organization. And he has to, or she have to manage those conflicts all the time and keep it coherent. And that is an art.
So let's go with two facets of that. The first is you've spoken about attributes or roles, requirements of the CEO. You've spoken about the CEO as sort of a conductor, synthesizer, orchestrator, that they need to apply power effectively, and they've got to have a diary that's well managed. Can you fill out give me the other bullet points of the attributes of the effective CEO? And then the second question is, if I'm part of this team that is working with the CEO, what am I doing to...
Right. So it's, think of, let me come to the second question first and say, if you're a member of a team, you must understand what the CEO is trying to do. You may not always agree with it, but a CEO needs a great team making the thing happen. I just think of rugby as a good example. Every player has a role to play, but you've all got to be looking at the point of the game to win the game. So
is the CEO the captain of the rugby team, or is the CEO?
No, I'd say most of the time is the captain on the field.
Okay.
And should be.
Okay.
Yeah,
and the chairman is the coach?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you're in the battlefield.
Okay.
So, and your first question, just remind me.
So the first question is about the attributes of the CEO. If we fill out a bullet list of desirable attributes of the CEO.
I don't think you can rank them. Okay. I think it depends on the circumstances. Maybe you're running a very successful company and you may need different attributes, or you're running a company in big trouble, or one that's stuck, or that has a big problem of some kind. These are all different situations. But broadly speaking, I think one attribute that we don't talk about enough is and I'm not good at this, is staying calm. When the bullets are flying, being able to take a breath, pause, get outside, look at the thing from another angle, and just view time, not in the heat of the moment, but in what's going on here, what's causing what's going on here to happen.
And only when all else fails, panic.
Yeah, there are times when you panic. Realizing that most of your decisions, if you're not making too many decisions that are operational decisions, if you're making strategic decisions, you're doing so in the teeth of uncertainty. You can't be sure what you're doing is right. That is one of the unique things about a CEO. So someone who understands that and can manage that, because you've also got to have the confidence. I mean, I think South African CEOs are pretty confident people, sometimes too confident. You've got to have enough confidence to persuade people to follow you. Because if people say, no, I think he's wrong or she's wrong, I'm not following them. Because what I've learned about these teams is it's all voluntary. In teams, people choose whether they're going to really fight for the win or they're just going to play the game.
Okay.
And a great leader gets them to play for the win. And to do that, you have to understand the whole thing as a functional head in the team. But the CEO himself or herself has really got to put the whole thing together. Another great quality, of course, is imagination. To imagine something that doesn't quite exist yet, or to spot a trend and realize that's going to be very powerful and respond to it. A top general once said to me, a great general has to have two skills: pick the right team and set the agenda. The rest is easy. So you never finish your to-do list. The American military talk about the rule of three, that any leader can only do three important things at any time, over any period of time. It's focus. Sam Walton was like that. He had a very narrow agenda. He tried to understand everything by traveling
pick the
around,
three
but pick your three and spend your year going for them, or 90 days, whatever it is. But focus on three if you can. The brain can't handle
more than that. Too many.
No, they're too many,
octopus.
and they contradict each other, and you easily get lost and you're persuaded by other things. Having a point of view is a huge asset for a leader. Having a point of view,
which you can then defend, apply,
which you then pursue. And you've got to have the guts to say I'm wrong, or adapt it. We all do that, but you've got to have set some direction. A team that feels the CEO hasn't have direction is very seldom a successful team.
So let's just stay with that for a second. You're venturing into territory which says, as the CEO, choose three, not four.
Well, it could be five. Well, whatever the number is.
But let's just put also onto the list. What should the CEO not do?
Should not interfere if it's not strategic. And if you have a good team, they'll be taking care of that. Should not overmanage. South Africans do tend to overmanage.
So you've got to know where to stop reaching.
Absolutely. You've got to trust the others. I always said, pick people you can understand and that understand you. Pick people who are good at something you're not good at.
Yeah.
And pick people you trust to do the right thing when you're not there.
Okay.
Because if you're having to monitor them, you're dead before you start.
And then you're in the hands of luck, right?
And you've got to look a lot calmer than you are.
Okay.
And you've got to find that time I talked about.
So you're allowed to do the
duck business, absolutely. Because the CEO, becomes the figurehead, and it's actually quite corrosive for yourself. Your ego gets lost in the role, very dangerous territory. Manfred Ketsterfis wrote a lot about that. This narcissism that comes with power, we see a lot of that. But you've got to try and protect yourself and your family life, your personal life. But you are a figurehead, and how you behave in every moment, people watch you to see the detail of how you behave, not the bullshit that you say, but what you actually do and how you treat people.
So let's close here, Nick, with perhaps three examples of, and I need to try and narrow this so that we're not doing leadership examples, but if we think of three people, one person from military, a general as a CEO, one person from politics, the prime minister, president, as the CEO of the political organization, and one from business. Who could we go to as our fantastic examples?
You're putting me under pressure now, so I'm going to give you the business card. We're going to talk about the first two.
Well, can I volunteer one and throw Margaret Thatcher into the hat straight away?
Yeah, but I'm not putting her in there.
No, not allowed.
No, my two great political leaders would be Deng Xiaoping, in the 20th century, and China, the modernization of China, a life really, really worth studying. And the other, strange enough, someone whose life I'm studying right now is Oliver Tambo. I think he was an extraordinary leader who held the ANC together in 32 years of exile, never saw the final election, but remarkable man to study, administratively, ethically, organizationally, and strategically. He changed the strategy of the ANC consistently. A great individual. For a military leader, I'd pick someone unusual, which would be Eisenhower.
Okay.
Eisenhower was the commander of the Allied forces for the invasion of Europe. And one of his distinguishing features, as opposed to Patton, who was a guts and glory general, was that he was a great team builder. And he had to hold the French, de Gaulle, who always argued with Churchill and with him, the Americans, which provided all the money and the troops, the British, who were a bit battered by the war, the Commonwealth countries, had to hold them all together for the invasion of Europe, and did an incredible job at doing that under enormous strain. There's the famous story of the night before the invasion of Europe. He'd written his resignation letter, and he had it in his pocket.
Wow.
I failed. He had it on him as they launched those ships. So there are many others. GIBS in Vietnam, probably one of the greatest military strategists of the 20th century. He was Ho Chi Minh's general. He destroyed the French in Dien Bien Phu, an incredible battle. And he opened up the Ho Chi Minh line of bringing all these weapons into Vietnam. And I mean, to sort out the USA in a 10-year campaign was an extraordinary achievement from a very poor country, and he was a great tactician.
I'm going to go, not that we have a script, but I'm going to go off script or off piste and say, you push back to me the business leader. For me, that's an easy one to do. Piyush Gupta, which with South African humor, I'll say he's a good Gupta. Development Bank of Singapore, which becomes DBS, one of the most digitized banks in the world, and shifting from a traditional paper-based into this leading organization. So I'd volunteer him as my business aspiration. Then I'd tipped Margaret Thatcher into the hat, but from a political perspective, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf also just stands head and shoulders in terms of her ability to get stuff done.
We hosted her here at a dinner, at a lunch once.
Absolutely extraordinary political leader, CEO.
Good to have some African leaders in this category.
Yeah, and then the third, we've touched on off-piste, we've touched on Scott and Amundsen, but I'd put Amundsen as my CEO adventurer, getting the team, the cohesion.
But who would we pick as the greatest business leader in our lifetimes? I mean, I lived in Seattle during the rise of Microsoft, and I spent a few minutes with Gates. He was truly remarkable, that guy. I thought he'd be a nerd. He wasn't. He was extremely well-read and well-traveled. He was a very thoughtful guy. And if you watch the Netflix series on him, if that's not inspirational, nothing is. I would say Henry Ford just changed the entire industrial economy through our lifetimes. It's ended now. But these extraordinary people who've shaped industries. There's so many of them.
And those are the leadership principles and CEO attributes that we get from them.
My thing about studying leadership is never copy anyone.
Yeah.
Learn from everyone and copy no one. Be true to yourself and your situation, but be inspired by these people and their stories.
And not copying takes us back to the essence of strategy.
Right, exactly. Thanks, Adrian.
Great being with you, Nick.
See you soon.